welcome back, everyone. I'm joined here by Zeal, and we're going to be going through the Hantavirus. Zeal hasn't really touched upon any of this stuff yet, so it's going to be interesting. This will be his first take of this new narrative. So, without further ado, how are you doing, Zeal?
I'm doing good, man. Can't complain.
Living the dream, mate.
Living the dream, working away, keeping my head above water, and trying to stay out of trouble, generally speaking.
Exactly. That's the dream, mate. Right. Well, here's this Jake Rosemarian, and to give a little bit of background about this guy, he's So his husband, he's I forget the legal firm now, but the legal firm is effectively it works with Blackstone or BlackRock. It's some I don't think it's the BlackRock that we're used to, talking about.
Yeah.
But anyway, just an interesting sort of factoid there. And moreover, as well, his sister works with a global health company as a sort of virus and crisis management.
Right.
And moreover, as well, if you look into his LinkedIn, he also did an internship at a Jerusalem news. I think it was a Jerusalem newspaper or a Jerusalem media outlet. I forget now. So this guy is rather an interesting, peculiar gentleman. But anyway, he's paid by the company behind MV Hondius, this sort of polar expedition and cruise liner company, to create influencer like content for them. So it's again, it's all very strange, and moreover as well on this MV Hondius. Now this is an extremely niche polar cruise expedition that goes down to Shea, which is the end of the world, quite literally in its Spanish name. This is a place in Argentina, and anyway, it also does routes as well up around about the Antarctic and St. Georgia and those islands in the South Atlantic. But anyway, it's a very niche thing. But there was three, fairly well-to-do and major influencers that were on this MV Hondius. One is a very famous Arabian travel blogger. I forget his name now, but the other one is Rui Chinet, who's a Turkish blogger who's more well-known, at least in the Western sphere of things. And then, of course, this Jake Rosemarian. But anyway, just to give a little bit of a background to this guy, I mean, he's very peculiar, but here's his statement here. I just want to see what you sort of get from it, first takes.
I normally wouldn't make a video like this, but I feel like I need to say something, so I wrote a few things down. I am currently on board the MV Hondius, and what's happening right now is very real for all of us here. We're not just a story. We're not just headlines. We're people. People with families, with lives, with people waiting for us at home. There's a lot of uncertainty, and that's the hardest part. All we want right now is to feel safe, to have clarity, and to get home. So if you're seeing coverage about this, just remember that there are real people behind it, and that this isn't something happening somewhere far away. It's happening to us right now. I'll share more when I can, but for now, I just ask for your kindness and understanding. Thank you.
I am, yeah. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you loud and clear now. So are you convinced by that performance there?
Look, it's a bit a lot of treacle. I'm looking for the definition of a word here. Histrionic. IONIC. Histrionic means. Let me see. Here we go. Histrionic personality disorder is a personality disorder characterized by a pattern of excessive attention-seeking behaviors usually beginning in adolescence or early. Excessive desire for approval, exaggerated behavior, etc., etc. There's a few other kind of dodgy aspects to it as well, but yeah, he just seems like a guy that's well, my initial thing was, is this is fake? This guy is just like a bad actor out of I don't know. It's corny. Like it doesn't feel like the man is being honest. That would be my initial reading on it, like, you know.
That's the exact reading that I had as well. And here's the thing too. A lot of individuals in I guess the conspiratorial circles. I mean, even myself, the first initial feeling I had about this is the guy is basically a crisis actor. But the problem is,
Yeah.
in our social media day and age, and like we were saying, this sort of histrionic content that really marks the social media age, it's very difficult to distinguish between perhaps a crisis actor and just someone who is a corny, cringeworthy influencer, you know, who's just trying to effectively create a caricature of emotion to thus bring in the likes and the social validation, the clout and the content and all of this. So I do think that this individual, there's a peculiarity to him in his background, but please, sorry, Zeal.
No, not at all. No, look, I have to congratulate myself here and say histrionic is the word, which means excessively dramatic or emotional or affected. So I was, you know, that's, but as you were hinting at there, like there's something funny about it. Like, and I see this, I think I'm seeing this creeping in where, like, one time the psyop, so to speak, was carefully put together because they didn't want you to guess what was going on. But I wonder lately, are we starting to see a pattern where they actually, and this is where it gets into mind games in a big way, right? But they're actually kind of doing psyops that they want you to know it's a psyop without saying it kind of overtly. So they'll kind of, like, they're putting obvious crisis actors into the mix, and they're kind of playing a game, a kind of a mind game with people to further kind of push them down the road of this, this disordered view of the disordered world, like literally kind of a mind control thing, a kind of a trauma thing as well, because like it's as if you're kind of invoking the ghost of COVID-19 and the trauma that came with it, and now you're lampooning the public reaction by putting out a kind of a caricature of like this histrionic. You said the gentleman has a husband, is that correct?
Yes. I don't know if you could tell that.
Yeah, so the gentleman. Well, to be fair to the man, off the top, I didn't really, he seemed to be, I don't know, like that's the word I would use, histrionic, exaggerated, kind of caricature, immature. He struck me as a fellow that needs a bit of a kick in the arse, like, to get him into reality, if he is real.
I don't think he's ever had a punch
so
off the bus.
Yeah, but like, so that's why I think they're. I think they want people to subtly be aware that they're being played. And it's a way to push them back down, further into the kaleidoscope of insanity, of the madness. And I think, I was saying this earlier on. Like, I was thinking earlier on that they talk about MK Ultra as being, something that was done to individuals, but I think I have a sense that in 1970s America, in particular, around that time, MK Ultra was a nationwide experiment on the American people, on the society. It was a social experiment on an entire society, on the masses, to kind of manipulate their psyche. For whatever reason, maybe America got on too high a sense of nationalism after World War II, and it was, it needed to be kind of disintegrated and broken apart So I think that experiment maybe might have reached its zenith in around the 1970s, after the swinging 60s and the LSD and the hippie movement. And, you're kind of into the decade of serial killers. So, the society starts to fall apart, and it probably reaches its climax in the modern age, where America is a wasteland. So you need to create this character at the top, Trump, as a focus to just hold the attention together, or to take attention away from the fact that there's nothing around. It's just a whirlpool and emptiness, chaos. So you have this scarecrow in the middle of the field, this president, and these wars, these synthetic, manufactured, fake wars, to kind of just hold the public attention together. And then you're moving out. You're moving into these like various psyops. Now, look, I know you. I must ask you, Silas, about the occult and the symbolic kind of references in and around this, because I know you've spoken a bit about this. So I'll ask you a little bit about that to maybe give us an idea what's involved there. But would I be right in saying that?
Oh yeah, there's a hell of a lot. I mean, even his name, Jake Rosemarin, or Jacob Rosemarin. So Jacob, of course, in Hebrew means the heel grabber. And there's this idea you see with Esau and Jacob, and of course this is what effectively underpins Jewish eschatology, and of course Jewish mystical or Kabbalistic eschatology, which is the idea that Esau held the head of Jacob, and there's sort of this prenatal struggle that went on between these two elemental forces, or these two offspring. And of course, Jacob was the heel grabber. So you have this almost Ouroboros type of illustration going on with that. Also, as well, of course, Jacob became Israel. And then Rosemarin is rose can mean rose, as in the flower itself, or ROS in Latin is like the morning dew. So, and of course, the Marin itself comes from Mary, or Miriam, which means the bitter sea. So this is all very, very interesting. Of course, rose is also the etymological root of Rosicrucian. So it can either mean rosy cross, or it can mean the cross of the dawn's dew, which is another sort of interesting thing surrounding this. But ultimately, to give you a general gist, if you look at the story, the patient zero, this Leo Schippelrud, I think his name is. It means in Dutch shield maker's place, and Leo, of course, is the lion or the sun, and of course he dies, and he dies at Ushea, which is the end of the world. Now, interestingly, the motto of that place is Ushea, Argentina, the end of the world and the beginning of everything. And he dies like the fool, which is the zero card. Leo was the patient zero. The fool fell over the precipice at the edge of the world, the end of the world, staring at the sky. Of course, Leo supposedly contracted this thing from a landfill site, trying to, birdwatch. I think he was trying to look for the elusive white-throated caracara. There's something to that as well, but I won't get into that. Basically, it's this Gnostic idea or Gnostic framework of the fall of the sun, of the death of the sun, and its travel through on the barge through the Duat, or the River Styx, or the underworld. He traveled for 13 days across the Atlantic, and his wife was called Miriam. So again, there's that idea that we see in Gnosticism too, this sort of synonym with Sophia, or the divine feminine. She mourned him, even the Isis as well. She mourned him, and then of course he was taken back to the Canadian, well, to Tenerife. And Tenerife is an interesting place itself, because that island in the Canaries Islands, this is the largest one. Tenerife it's most famous for a mountain called Mount Teide, which literally means the snow-capped mountain. And according to the local belief, underneath this mountain was a place called Echide or Echide, which means hell in the local Gaucha language. This is the natives of the Canaries. So I mean, the thing is just it basically is it's basically a rendition or a retelling of the death of Ra story or the death of Osiris, and the birth of Horus, right, the eternal child. So it's basically the alchemical magnum opus, the Negredo. He contracts this thing at the landfill. He dies. He goes through the putrefaction. So from the west, he travels to the east. From the land of the setting sun, he travels to the dawn to find the dawn. And so it's basically that. That's what you're seeing with it. Ultimately, to provide a really simplistic and sort of quick gist of the thing that's going on here.
But just to recap a little bit, what was the initial? I mean, these people are on a cruise, is that right?
Yes, there was 147 of them when they left the Green Cape or Cabo Verde.
And where were they headed for?
Argentina.
Okay, so they stop off somewhere and they're looking at the local wildlife on an island or something, no?
No, they stop off right at the bottom of Argentina. I believe it's known as Terra del Fuego. And there's a place there known as Ushuaia. And
how do you spell that? Can you spell that? Ushuaia?
U-S-H Ushuaia, yeah, A-I-A. I think that's how you spell it.
Ushuaia.
By the way,
right,
that's not the Spanish name for it. The Spanish name is, it translates to the end of the world. The Ushuaia is the local, I think it's Mapuche, which is the local indigenous name for that place.
Right, that's Ushuaia is the spelling of that.
Yes. And
are we anywhere near the Falklands down here, Silas?
Oh yeah, you're actually a sort of a hop, skip, and a jump from the Falklands. Yeah, you're not very far at all from the Falklands.
Okay, so we take a ship from where was the originating port?
I forget the originating port. I know it left Cabo Verde,
which is where?
Is, if I recall correctly, Cabo Verde is somewhere on the. Yeah, it's on the west of Africa, so it's the Western Africa, basically south of the Canary Islands or southwest of the Canary Islands. Interestingly, as well, Cabo Verde has 10 islands, similar to, of course, to the 10 Sephiroth. Cabo Verde is the Green Cape, so green is the color of, well, basically the Malkuth, right? The of death, of decomposition, of spiritual involution within the esoteric sort of traditions. But yeah, that's where it left, and it's traveled westward, or really a southwesterly course down to Ushuaia, and I believe it stopped off somewhere else along the way, if I recall correctly. But supposedly Ushuaia, he visited. Now again, this ties in with Patient Zero, or the Zero card, the Fool. Leo Schipelrud, or however you say it in Dutch. He traveled to a local unregulated landfill in Ushuaia.
Hold on, no, Silas. Who did? Who did?
The Patient Zero. So his name was Leo Schipelrud. So that's the first individual on that cruise that contracted this disease, this rat virus, this Hantavirus.
Schipelrud, is it? R-O-O-D?
Yes,
something like that.
Yes, I'll get the actual, because
I have it here. I have it here. Leo.
Yeah.
Sorry, Schilper. Jesus. Schilperurd. That's a difficult. So that's Schil, Schil, and then PER, and then Oord, OORD. So Schilper Oord. I'm guessing, is that Dutch?
It's
Yeah,
Dutch,
he was
yeah,
a Dutch ornithologist. He's actually a man who studies the birds. Bit like
exactly,
myself.
yes.
I'm joking. Only
But
joking. Sorry. Okay, so let's just piece this. Sorry, no, because I know you have looked into this, so I'm kind of putting it together myself here.
no, don't worry, man.
So Leo is patient 0, right? Now, before I ask any, like, why is this a big deal? Like, is hantavirus is a bit like, why is this a concern at all? Like, I mean, is this like a possible pandemic vibe, or why is this in the media as much as it is? Like,
Well,
is this extremely rare, or what? Or
it is extremely rare. I mean, the human-to-human contact, even if we look at official epidemiology, it's extremely rare to even have human-to-human transmission of this thing. And moreover as well, the reason for the alarm, I guess, superficially or within the mainstream, would be that this Andes variant, this Andes strain as they're calling it, and primarily the pulmonary strain of this thing, this is the one that Leo supposedly had, as opposed to, of course, the hemorrhagic fever one. The Andes pulmonary strain has a 30 to 40% lethality rate, supposedly, right? But again, this is because the outbreaks are so rare, because the outbreaks are also so small, clusters of them are so small in terms of case rate. Really, you can't get a proper lethality rate because the sample size is so small. But here's another interesting thing. There was another outbreak of this in the southwestern United States in 1993. In fact, near as damn it to the same sort of month or date range that we're dealing with this one. And interestingly, 1993, from it's 33 years from 2026, right? So there's the 33 again. And moreover, as well, this was in a place known as the Four Corners. In fact, it was known as the Four Corners outbreak, and this is where all hantavirus observation or what would you call it? Sort of surveillance. That's where it started with this 1993 outbreak. So it's almost like a 33-year cycle, you could say. But it's like what you stated at the beginning. It's almost like they want you to piece these things together. They're leaving it almost as breadcrumbs, as conspiratorial catnip. And yeah, yep.
okay, so Mr. Schilper Oord goes to Ushuaia in southern Argentina. He goes to the dump to see a bird, the municipal dump, and he goes back on the ship, which was called the MV what? MV
Hondius.
You got that ship
which
now?
means MV
Hondius.
Hondius, which means Hondius is named after. In fact, it's another Dutch name. Well, actually, it's the Latin version of the name, but I'll just make sure.
Hondius.
Right. So the MV Hondius is a real-world modern polar class expedition cruise ship operated by Ocean-Wide Expeditions. This is the individual that, this is the company that was employing as a sort of full-time influencer and advertiser, I guess, that of Jake Rosemarin. So it launched in 2019. It is built specifically to take tourists to the Arctic and Antarctica. The ship is named after Jodocus Hondius from 1563 to 1612, a highly influential Flemish-Dutch cartographer and publisher. He is most famous for acquiring the plates of Gerardus Mercator, creator of the Mercator projection, and publishing incredibly important early maps of the world. His name itself, Jodocus or Jodocus Hondius, literally means Lord of the Hounds. Now, why that's important is because, of course, the hounds or the hound itself relates to Canis Major or Sirius. And Of course, if we're talking about the fool, and the reason Leo is the fool is because even the locals wouldn't travel to this unregulated landfill, supposedly, right? So only Leo would. And Leo, of course, contracted this deadly disease because Leo is the fool. This is the idea, right? So, of course, with the Fool tarot card in the Rider-Waite, you actually have man's best friend, the dog, which of course reversed as God, but you had the dog next to him, the white dog of Sirius. And so here's the connection there as well. So yeah, the full thing is like, it's like an ARG on steroids, an alternate reality game. It's like what you're saying. They want people to find these things. It literally, they're breadcrumbs that are left, so people can find them. Of course, this is one layer. I'm looking at one layer of it. This is the sort of esoteric layer. So they've sort of caught me in the trap with this one. But there's other layers of this thing that, well, for example, what we were watching with Jake Rosemarine there. I mean, it looked fake. If you were trying to fake it, you know, if you're trying to intentionally tell people and signal to them and communicate to them, listen, this thing is fake, you would have you would have the performance that Jake just showed us there. You know, this fake crying, this like what you said, a histrionic or hysterical or hyperbolic performance. You know,
Yeah.
so that's what I think's going on with this.
That ship is owned by a company called Oceanwide Expeditions, and they were founded in 1993. We're told they may be a front company.
Really? Wow. So they
Something
were
else,
actually
yeah.
founded in 93. So the same
Yeah.
year as the outbreak, the Four Corners outbreak. Wow.
Okay. Right. Okay.
Didn't know that. I didn't know that.
Their kind of company symbol looks like a diamond shape, but it also looks strangely like a pyramid. The top half of it, anyway, looks like a pyramid. Oceanwide Expeditions. There's some strange note here in the about graffiti. In December 24, graffiti was discovered on a historic building in Whalers Bay, part of the former British base B. This is down in the Weddell Sea. I'm assuming this is Queen Maud Land. This is like the South Pole somewhere, I'm guessing.
Yeah.
So in December 24, graffiti was on behalf of the UK. Sorry, it's Antarctic. On behalf of the UK Antarctic Heritage Trust, the Oceanwide Expedition successfully organised a cleanup and restoration operation in January 25. This was supported by the British Antarctic Survey, the International Association of Antarctica Tour Operators, and the Foreign Commonwealth and Development Office. So it doesn't say what was the nature of the graffiti. It gives a link to whether it was something, that was against whaling or God knows what. But that's a strange note on the company page here, and then it goes on to list some of the other ships that the company has purchased. MV Plancius, Plancius, 2010, the MV Ortelius, Ortelius, and SV Rembrandt van Ryn was acquired in 2012, and they bought the MV Hondius in 2016. So this is just go ahead.
Well, also as well, it left another link to the Fool card esoterically is that it left Uche, Argentina on the 1st of April 2026. The Hantavirus was initially confirmed in 2 passengers, with suspected cases in 7 passengers. The outbreak continued to spread as the ship continued on its planned course. So it left on April the 1st, which is, of course, April Fool's Day. So that's another little connection there. But sorry, man, please.
No, not at all. I'm just doing my own little bit of research as you're talking. So MV, the whole point of these ships is that the hulls are strengthened to cope with ice. So they were armored hulls. The ship's hull and propulsion system are strengthened for navigation ice-covered waters, according to what's called Polar Class 6, which is intended for summer and autumn operation of medium first-year ice. which may include old ice inclusions. So these are engineering specifications. So MV Hondius is polar class. It's what's called PC polar class, an ice class assigned to a ship by the Classification Society based on this is the standard, the United Requirements for Polar Class Ships, developed by the International Association of Classification Societies. So this should tell us a little bit of just this is kind of going off on one now, but so this is a total footnote now for nerds. Anyone who wants to nerd out a bit on some of this info, but these are different polar class specifications for hull. So it gives a different spec. For example, PC3 is a specification. Polar Class 3 is qualifies the ship for year-round operation in second-year ice, which may include multi-year ice resolutions, and that corresponds to ice thickness of up to 2.5 meters. Right. So you're classifying these hulls to deal with up to 3 meters of ice. I'm assuming to penetrate it. Penetrate that ice and just basically to be able to deal with the steel to be able to deal with the ice, the momentum of that vessel passing through those waters. But anyway, just a bit of an aside there.
I've also sent you as well.
Go ahead, man.
Please jump in.
No, go ahead.
Well, this is interesting because it actually mirrors the sort of formulaic beginnings of the entire Corona event, which was with, of course, the Diamond Princess. The Diamond Princess, again, Diamond Princess is rather interesting itself as a name, but that was in the Northern Hemisphere primarily. I believe it set sail from a Yokohama port in Japan, and then it was quarantined in Okinawa, and it traveled to other places. I forget the other places it traveled to now, but effectively that's in the Northern Hemisphere. In fact, that was in the Pacific Ocean as well, right? So this is on the other side. This is sort of the contrast, the dualism of it all, the black and the white. And this is, of course, 6 years after that event. And if you notice, you'll find, if you sort of map all of this out, every 6 years there is a sort of varying degree of sort of a mass formation psychosis surrounding both a sort of oil crash or oil boom, and that in conjunction with a pandemic of some kind. So 6 years prior to 2020, it was Ebola, and I believe there was an oil boom at that point. And then you can go 6 years back from that. I believe it was like H1N1 or something like that. So all of these things are ultimately, they appear to be formulaic, and they're on a cyclical timescale. Just to add that as well.
See as well, just again on a kind of a nerdy footnote, the Hondius, according to this, is named after Jodocus Hondius, who was a Dutch, Flemish, rather, engraver and cartographer, sometimes called Jodocus Hondius the Elder. And according to this, he helped establish Amsterdam as the center of cartography in Europe, map making in the 17th century. So straight away, I'm wondering, is there might be any connection between this guy and John Dee? Because John Dee was another map maker, was he not? Operating in the 1600s, am I right? In the 17th century.
Yes, I believe this individual was roughly at this. I think he might have been a contemporary, actually. Let me get his.
And interestingly, he was in England. While in England, Hondius was instrumental in publishing the work of Francis Drake, who had made a circumnavigation of the world in the late 1570s. In particular, in 1589, Hondius produced a now famous map of the Bay of New Albion, at Drake's Cove, where Drake briefly established a settlement on the west coast of North America. Mhm. He's based in Amsterdam as well, so there's a who was based in Holland
Oh yes.
in
Oh yes.
around that time as well.
Well, this was the Dutch Golden Age, so this was at the point where basically the Netherlands, interesting as well, the Netherlands, right, the Netherworld, it's also been it's used heavily, of course, in this entire sort of narrative, the sequence of this narrative, but the Netherlands themselves, and of course Amsterdam, was the center of finance as well, and interestingly, that was the center of finance in the old world. And in the New World, the center of finance is New Amsterdam, which of course was renamed as New York. I believe it was in the late 17th century. It was conquered by the British or the English. It's still at that point, and it took the new name of New York, the Big Apple. So yeah.
So where do you think this story is going, or what's the point of this story? Do you think this story is like an occult sort of a symbolic reveal, or do you think this is a sideshow Bob in the sea of ongoing narratives, or do you think this is like a leak into COVID Part 2, or what do you make of it?
Well, this is really part of a wider scale, what I'm now calling the polycrisis, which is you've reached a point where there's multiple black swan events, again, varying degrees of sort of hysteria inducing atmosphere surrounding them, right? But ultimately, what they require this for is similar to COVID, similar to all of these things, is firstly it allows them to shore up the fiat currency system for a few more years, which by that what I mean is it allows them to quantitatively ease. It allows them to inflate the monetary supply, thus providing artificial buoyancy to the system, and moreover as well, it allows them to generate that prodigious amount of money, expand the monetary base, so they can also as well actively build out the data center infrastructure. This is all to move towards the sort of AI or algocratic system that they desire. Even the whole US-Iran war, all of the various flashpoints that you see around the world, that is also to reshape not just the socio-political systems of the world, but also the global economic system of the world. And this is being done through the control of resource choke points, and sort of the not necessarily monopolization of them, because they're already monopolized, but on the sort of global stage, directly, outwardly, right in the open, publicly, if you will. They want either America or Russia, China, BRICS to control these resource checkpoints to establish the dialectic based upon these super blocks. And this is how they'll maintain the sort of the generated controllable chaos in the system going forward. So ultimately, to cut a long story short, it's another stepping stone to the sort of transition into this algocratic or AI-driven, AI-centric system that we're sort of seeing the nascent stages of right now. But that's what I think's going on here. Whether this actually develops or not, ultimately they're going to keep this going for as long as possible. Who knows, right? There's also another potential, which is that this is so utterly fake. They're literally rehashing and reusing the corona formula, and people are seeing through it. I mean, there's a massive, a mass a threshold of people, what would you call it, a sort of maximal threshold of people that are seeing this for what it is, right? Fake. It makes me wonder, and this is my next video that I'm doing on this. It's sort of intellectual speculation, but are they doing this intentionally? Are they trying to get us to, again, they place the breadcrumbs down. We believe we're smart because we find these breadcrumbs that, of course, they wanted to be found, that we see that it's fake, right? Of course, anyone can discover that first clip that we saw in the beginning was, you know, clearly, as you said, histrionic. It's trying to push some sort of agenda, be it a personal agenda or, of course, a more universalist or global agenda, to drive fear. Are they doing that because they want, you know, they sort of want us to, they want to weaponize our disbelief. They want us to sort of put our guard down. They want us to believe that this is all just merely sort of media narratives, media theatre, that perhaps they've got something waiting in the wings to sort of, I don't know, delete a vast majority of the population. Because another thing we have to bear in mind is, if we're going into an AI-centric system, and this is also, by the way, why they're also pushing the shortages of aviation fuel, energy, all of this, and they're driving up the costs of that, is because the system itself is no longer human-centric. It doesn't, you know, the means of production is beginning to transition from humans to automated systems, right? Again, we're still in the nascent stages of that, but this is what they're planning for. So in that, in that transition, and in that, you know, transitional system, we actually become resource competitors with the data centers, with the AI, nascent AI systems. So it makes sense that they would, firstly, you know, try and drive up the cost of energy, so that, and of course as well, drive narratives where they can effectively ration our energy and stop us using as much energy. And moreover as well, it makes sense that they would try and depopulate us vis-a-vis whatever means. Because again, we are resource competitors with the nascent system itself. So I think ultimately those couple of things that I mentioned there, I think that's what's going on. What's your opinion or take on this, man? And just in general.
I don't know. I think people, like, I tried to size up the reaction of people around me, and I just think people were kind of bemused by it. Like, I hear people at work, you know, it comes on the TV, for example, we're in the cafeteria, and they make reference to it like it's just something kind of a curiosity, you know, and it's just something that's faded into the, you know, the tapestry of the modern age of, as you say, like, you know, kind of ongoing narratives and psyops. So so I'm not exactly sure what to make of it, but what was the term you used, like the black swan? These ongoing things popping up. It's like a multiplicity of stuff. It's like they have to calm down when one narrative sort of goes a bit lukewarm. They'll bring up another one, sideshow Bob, to absorb attention. So there's a huge amount of attention being focused. And as someone said it recently on the server, and it's like that, this kind of thing is hugely important, because there's an energy feed, like you know, attention. What is it again? Energy flows where attention goes. So like, there's part of all this is this sorcery is you know, keep looking at my hands as I move the 3-card trick around the table, and you know what I mean. It's focusing the attention. So I think that's a part of it, and I suspect, and if that is true, that the narrative itself doesn't necessarily need to go anywhere. It just needs to capture the attention for that period of time while there's, you know, a lukewarm, a thawing of something else. For example, Iran now, you know, suddenly sort of shuffles over stage left a bit, and Trump shuffles over, you know, and they'll come back again tomorrow. So you have this as a, you know, it's probably generating fear and anxiety as well on some level, because I think people don't know what to make of it. You know, rodents, droppings, and Hantavirus, and it's all very remote and obscure, and you know, the wailing and the gnashing of the teeth about the gentleman that you played at the start there just adds to the kind of absurdity of it all, you know. But at the same time, it's kind of like, even if you infer, right, this is fake, you're left with the kind of stark realization that the mass media are actually playing with your mind, and they're not even trying to hide it. And then, like, if you arrive at that conclusion, then you're left with a fairly stark realization on what the hell is going on, and that what the hell is going on moment leaves you with a sense of, basically, of fear and of, you know, disenfranchisement and alienation and anxiety. So that's the subtext of this story. Like, that's what's hidden between the lines when you unpack it. Like, you know, I think that's the net emotional what it has bequeathed to the public mindset, and that's what I think a lot of these narratives are doing. Just as we mentioned, just as a quick aside to that comment, right? I'm reading here about Hondius. Hondius goes to England.
I was just
let me
about to
see.
bring that up. There is a connection with John Dee. Yeah. Please continue.
Yes. Yeah. If I can find my little reference here. He's a remarkable. Oh, sorry, beg your pardon here. Okay, essentially, I'm trying to find the exact quote, but what it said was that John Dee's original maps were heavily inspired by the Dutch cartographers, including our friend Hondius. But if you bear with me there, and hold on, listen to this. Hondius translated the text of the agreement between Henry Hudson and the Dutch East India Company. You know, so this is a fella that's kind of tied into stuff, you know. Hondius again. There's a cartographer. 1603 map of the world was likely one of the key planning tools that Henry Hudson and his Flemish backers used when planning the famous 1609 trip. This is about the discovering and conquering America. Amsterdam, 1608. Beg your pardon, no, I had the quote a second ago and I'm after losing it. Anyway, I'll find it again. Go ahead, Silas, where you going?
Well, I'm reading here. In 1584, Hondius fled religious persecution in Flanders and moved to London. During his decade in England, he became a central figure in the Elizabethan exploration scene, as you stated there, with the Hudson River. This puts him directly in the orbit of John Dee, and he lived from 1563 to 1612. So, you know, John Dee was most active in maybe the 1570s and 1580s. Effectively, you know, he probably would have come into contact with this Hondius character. So this puts him directly in the orbit of John Dee, Queen Elizabeth's court astronomer, master navigator himself, and arguably the most famous occultist, alchemist, and hermetic philosopher of the English Renaissance. Dee was the mastermind behind the navigational theories that guided explorers like Sir Francis Drake and Sir Walter Raleigh. He also, of course, coined the term British Empire. Hondius was the man tasked with engraving and publishing the maps these explorers used and generated. To mention regarding Dee, if no one is familiar with Dee and John Dee and Edward Kelly's angelic conversations, they utilized multiple magical items. One of them, of course, was that of the Aztec priest's scrying mirror or obsidian mirrors, and they utilized that to talk with a multiplicity of different angelic entities, as they called them. But they were also these entities conveyed to them the Enochian language, and moreover, which itself is a sort of enigma. But also they came into contact with a deity called Choronzon, which is effectively the dweller in the abyss. And supposedly Crowley, some 2 or 3 centuries later, also came into contact with this being. And yeah, so just to put that into perspective too, this being it's got a lot of characteristics that closely align it with the Nahuatl or Aztec Tetzcatlipoca, the Lord of the Smoking Mirror, also known as Yaotl, the enemy or the adversary. We would know him as Satan. And it's a primordial creation figure, but quite interesting. But we read here as well. So yeah, Hondius was the man that was tasked with engraving and publishing the maps these explorers used and generated, as you stated. While John Dee was attempting to communicate with angels using Enochian magic, Hondius was translating Dee's geographical data into copper plates. They shared a professional and intellectual network, even if Hondius did not partake in the sort of esoteric. And it writes here that when people talk about secrets in Hondius's maps, they are usually talking about state espionage, not necessarily the occult, as we see with Mercator's maps and the Rupus Nigra. So cartography in the 16th century was itself a very sort of esoteric pursuit. It was highly classified. Maps were the ultimate tool of imperial power. The most famous of these maps was Hondius Broadside, circa 1589, as you just stated there, with New Albion and Anchorage on the Californian or Oregonian coast. So, also as well to mention too, Hondius died in 1612, just 2 years before the first Rosicrucian manifestos, which announced a secret brotherhood of alchemists and sages. And of course, they were published in Germany and set Europe ablaze with conspiracy talk at the time. Hondius operated in the tight-knit world of Northern European engravers and publishers. His contemporaries included the Debris family, Theodore Debris and his sons, while Hondius focused heavily on geography and reviving Mercator's atlases. The Debris became the primary publishers for esoteric, hermetic, and early Rosicrucian texts. So, as you can see, he wasn't necessarily an occultist, at least publicly, but he was. There was something. His networks sort of, were he was in networks that were associated with these things.
Yeah, I just see this quote here now. For example, Hondius. He was friendly with the foremost English explorers, including William Davis. And William Davis discovered the channel between Canada and Greenland, which is now called the Davis Strait. And Davis, this is quote unquote, I can send you the link to this. Davis' effort was but one of many attempts by Englishmen utilizing Flemish maps to seek out a northwest passage to Asia. Okay. Davis, for example, was inspired by John Dee, educated at Leuven and best friends with Mercator. Where is Leuven? Is that in Holland? Leuven.
Yes, it is.
So John, So John Dee was educated at Leuven and best friends with Mercator.
Excuse me, it's Belgium. Belgium.
Okay, so Flemish is Belgium. And who in turn depended greatly on the Flemish cartographer friends and rivals Gerard Mercator and Abraham Ortelius. Much of this cartographic information about the New World for the English came through the extensive network of Protestant Anglo-Flemings, such as Ortelius' first cousin Emmanuel van Meteren. So anyway, that's just his kind of. So Hondius is from Flanders, Belgium. Okay, but he's tied in with someone with the Dutch. He married cartographer Colette van den Keer. She was Flemish Dutch. Okay, so these people are in business in Holland in the 1600s. So you can kind of guess who they're tied in with. And if I was a betting man, I'd say somebody had the technology in Europe at that time around maps, and they did a deal. And this is conjecture, but if I was a betting man, I'd say that whatever deal was done with the English at the time around the time King Charles was beheaded, part of the deal was, and John Dee was probably involved in this. They said to him, "Look, get us back into England, and we'll give you the maps, and we'll give you your empire, or we'll give you the tech to develop the maps, because the map is the technology, like the capacity to put the world into a globe or put the world on a piece of paper. Because if you can do that, then you can give that to your navy, your admirals and your skippers, and like you'll have, you can conquer the world, but you need the map." So I dare say there was something going on. Specifically, some technology was available that was either hidden or in the hands of a very few. That was extremely valuable technology at that time, and was one of the main sort of technological kind of pillars of what became the British Empire. Because without that, you couldn't get around. And it's kind of, we've talked about this before. What technologies were available in the past that were hidden, at that time, that were technologically advanced, and sometimes I have the sense that those certain technologies were available that were far ahead of their time, as it were hidden. So maybe there's some reference here now with the use of this guy's name on this vessel, Hondius.
Oh no, absolutely, and remember as well, these individuals were all alive just before the English Civil War. So Elizabethan England would have been basically the time of 1588 to 1603, give or take, and then of course beginning on the 22nd of August, rather interesting date there. 1642 to the 3rd of September 1651. That was the English Civil War, also known as the Great Rebellion. And then the Dutch English connection itself, or of course the financiers' control over England, was fully cemented with the Glorious Revolution in 1688, when the House of Orange assumed control of the British throne. So basically, what you're seeing there is exactly what you stated. It's this growth towards the British Empire, which of course continues to this day in the American Empire. The reason the transition occurred, the passing of the torch, as the Pilgrim Society stated in the early 20th century at a conference in New York, a rather auspicious conference, where this torch was being passed, so to say, is that the British Empire, the British populace themselves, had been completely sucked dry. They'd been exhausted due to continued war and continued, effectively exploitation by what was, unbeknownst to them, a foreign power that was controlling them under the sort of masquerade, the veneer of their own, their own their own nobility, their own sorts of leadership, right? It was named the British Empire, but it was about as British as I don't know, about as British as I don't know, an American New York pancake or something. It's or about as it's similar to the Federal Reserve. It's about as federal as oh god, I forget the term now, but you catch my drift there. We also read as well that another one of the in fact, he would have been probably the same. I think he's the same age, or near as damn at the same age as Jacondius Hondius, which is Francis Bacon, and he published many books. One of them was, of course, the posthumously published 1626 work named The New Atlantis, where he talks about Salomon's house, which is in the New Atlantis. It's a vast state-sponsored research institution located on the fictional hidden island of Ben Salem, or the New Jerusalem. So the fathers of Solomon's house, this is the same as the philosopher kings of the beautiful city, or the Calopolis of Plato's Republic. Again, this is a age-old mystery religion, a sort of idea that they seek to reclaim, a sort of precursor or lost wisdom, a lost civilization. They basically want a technocracy. They want a rule by experts, which is what we're sort of going into now. Are the elite scientists, sages? So the fathers of Solomon's house are the elite scientists, sages, and governors who run this institution. They are essentially the high priests of Bacon's new religion, which he terms empirical science. So, of course, we have our own new religion now, which is sort of an empirical scientific religion, which, of course, the new god, the nearly crowned god, which is AI. That will be the new god, as Yuval Noah Harari states. So it's never changed, and he states here, quote, "The end of our foundation is the knowledge of causes and secret motions of things." This is why, of course, like what you're saying, they desire engagement, because engagement sort of induces the chaos necessary for motion, right? And the enlarging of the bounds of human empire to the affecting of all things possible. So basically, they seek total mastery of nature herself through effectively applied technology and experimentation, right? Which is, of course, what they've continued to this day. So, of course, Hondius would have been. He must have ran in these circles. It's not public knowledge, but he must have been involved in these sorts of esoteric circles. And of course, Bacon's blueprint of the Solomon's house directly inspired the founding of the Royal Society of London in 1660, which was effectively the first. Well, it was a pioneer of modern science, but it was also the first sort of think tank, right? It was. And by the way, the Rosicrucians had a similar thing. They wanted to create what was called the Invisible College, which was this hidden brotherhood of the illumined, right? The illuminated alchemists and philosopher kings and scientists and basically experts, a technocratic class that would rule over the world, a sort of dumbed down populace. The special people ruling over the not so special people. This is effectively their idea.
I also had a kind of a hunch that this story is a cover for either a biological warfare agent or some sort of nanomaterial that's going to cause sort of physiological symptoms. Something that has been deployed in like a smart dust scenario, or some sort of biodigital fooling around with the human antenna, DNA or RNA, mRNA or whatever, and you're going to get physiological symptoms, but it's going to be passed off as a hantavirus. So it's a convenient excuse or a patsy virus to take the blame for human physiological symptoms that'll be as a result of nanomaterials and or God knows what.
That's an interesting potential. I came across this video some time ago now. It's by Greg Reese, and he's quite well known within these circles. But it discusses, funnily enough, several US patents, and it's a video titled Smart Dust and Human Chattel. I haven't watched it all, actually. I've only watched it partially. But
what's that word mean? Chattel, Silas. Chattel.
Chattel. It's where we get chattel slavery from. Chattel is basically it's effectively a dehumanized unit of labor, right? So it's similar to cattle. It's just sort of a worthless crop of production, if I recall correctly. So it's that's what it means.
So I noticed another like with some of these stories, like it was like the Iran story. It's it's all going to be over in 10 days or 2 weeks, and then it'll be over in 3 weeks, and then look, it's going to take 2 months. So the hantavirus, and now it's kind of ongoing. It's become the new normal. But the Hanta story, I see some of this kind of flip flop in the narrative as well. So like they had the kind of story sorted and people were home, but now you're getting this thing. Dutch medics to quarantine for 6 weeks after possible hantavirus exposure from poor PPE practice. So these people, these Dutch medics were coming back from, I don't know, helping people off this ship or God knows what, and they didn't have their PPE on right. So now they have to quarantine. So now you're kind of looking at a scenario where somebody didn't have their mask on or something like that, and now all of Europe is going to be infected with hantavirus or such.
Well, here's the thing. Here's the thing. I'll show you this video. This is rather interesting because this is what this shows. So it's like everything they're doing is setting up the narrative, again, like breadcrumbs. Yeah. So I'll play this.
Yes.
As you can see, he does not have any PPE on, supposedly. I mean, of course, what's this PPE going to do anyway? Anyone that's been in construction knows that these what they are is dust masks. They're effectively useless. Well, they're useless against silica dust. So, I mean, what? Of course, they're going to offer no protection against viruses.
But we dare not question the ritual symbolic ephemera of the cult. I noticed that the music actually in that clip is from Curb Your Enthusiasm, Larry David's TV show. Did you ever see that? It's a comedy series.
Oh, really? Is that where that's from? Yeah. I hear it all the time. No, I've never watched it.
That's Larry David's show, which actually I think is a very funny show. I do actually confess, I think Larry David is very, very funny. It's a great show. But he's probably another big Hollywood insider. You know what I mean? So it's got that. It's a comedy. So I don't know who put that little clip together, but it's interesting that they used that particular piece of music.
Well, here's another thing to mention, which is there's a lot of predictive programming that I'm seeing sort of do the rounds. So here's one of them. This is from The Simpsons.
Look, that's our ship!
Purple!
An emergency message. Outbreak of the deadly virus is spreading rapidly.
A virus?
A worrying new challenge in efforts to contain the Hantavirus.
All we want right now is to feel safe.
For now, nobody is being allowed off the boat.
All ships must remain at sea.
Have fun! My booze!
It's the same disease that killed Betsy Arakawa, the wife of late actor Gene Hackman.
According to the newspaper, FEMA was called out to manage an outbreak of the hantavirus. I'm saying it wasn't the hantavirus.
They're buying it. They're buying it.
Your father and I were recruited for a project. They told us it was biological warfare, a virus.
What killed those men?
A silent weapon for a quiet war.
So as you can see, this has the sort of stereotypical hallmarks of predictive programming as well, as of course they all do. What's your take upon that?
Well, You know, there's a whole kind of other angle on it. Like it's like the QAnon thing, where well, it's not quite like it, but it's a little bit like it in that. Say, for example, you release a narrative into the public domain, but you breadcrumb aspects of that narrative as a kind of decode into the truth community. And now what you'll do is, but at some point in time, as an outcome of that narrative, something will actually happen in the world. So what you may end up with is you're hooking in aspects of the sort of truth kind of conspiracy community as decoders, and kind of like private detective people piecing together bits of evidence and information to kind of predict or intimate something that's about to happen. So really, it's like active propaganda with active participation in real time. So you're releasing a piece of propaganda that's active. You know, it's almost like it's like a computer game or game theory, or you know, where you're an active participant in the propaganda on a global scale, like, you know. So, and this is kind of potentially hooking us into these narratives, because, you know, we end up decoding them, and we end up kind of trying to figure out what's going on, because, you know, in the absence of anything else happening. So in a way, it's soaking up our attention as well, which is a kind of a strategic win for the power structure, if you will. Yet it's not something we can kind of avoid, because it's the only information perhaps that's available to get any sort of situational awareness around what's going on. So you're into this kind of a chess game, mind game. Like you're using the worst information possible that is available, i.e. propaganda, the worst information, to try to intimate what is going on, what is the power structure up to, what are the enemy up to, what are the social engineering ambition, what's the objectives rather. But it's like the worst kind of information to use to try to determine that what's happening. And when I say worst, it's because it's so tainted. It's literally from the hand of the enemy as a kind of as a manipulation in itself. So so it's like, it's kind of like you have to be wary of it. Yeah. It's like as if we kind of have to be wary of it in one way. Like you can't kind of turn your back on it, but at the same time you have to be wary of it, if you know what I mean. Because it is essentially a weapon. It's like if you think that this narrative is contrived in any way, or even partially contrived, it's essentially weaponized. Therefore it is a weapon. It's a weapon for mind control. And it's like going into the temple listening to Jim Jones when you're going through this stuff. Not you personally, but me included as well, or us. You know, it's like we're in the temple listening to Jim Jones, and you know, and the Kool-Aid has been passed around, or maybe we've been shot by the CIA in the jungle, whichever version of the story you think is correct. But you know, you're looking into the abyss, and the abyss is looking into you a little bit as well with this stuff. But that's kind of the age we're in. You know, it's a very strange kind of it's like as if you were in the temple with Jim Jones, and you're just listening to him to see how did he kind of control his disciples, as a kind of fly in the wall morbid curiosity thing. But then when you're done with it, and you go to leave the temple, say, right, I'm going back to reality, I've had enough of this, and you walk out the door of the temple, and you find that outside is also Jim Jones's temple, meaning there is no reality left anymore. The entire world is occult, so you can't actually leave it. So that's kind of where I think we are with a lot of this stuff. This is MK Ultra on a global scale, and I think actually that these black swan or episodic psyop type scenarios that are chapter by chapter are actually all the one. They are all the one psyop scenario with sort of different variants of flavor, but they are essentially the same thing, just dressed up different kind of narrative devices. But ultimately, they're the same it's like the music that's coming out these days on pop radio. It all sounds the same because I'm assuming a lot of it has AI content or has AI aspects in the writing or whatever. So you get this familiar. It has a familiarity to it, like, and this story has a familiarity to it, not just with the kind of COVID narrative thing, but the way it's put together on a wider, like, it has almost kind of like that guy reminds me of the father in the Sandy Hook case. It's like the two of them went to the same school of crisis actor kind of school for wayward actors, like, and but that's done on purpose, and I think Reagan actually, or someone of the people on the server said that, or maybe your own term, that the shitification of things, that it's done, and is that the term that was used, a very unfortunate term, but that I think
shitification, yeah.
Yeah, so it's deliberately done crap, and it's kind of like it's almost like an insult to you, to us personally. It's like saying, look, this is what your mind is. This is all that your shitty mind deserves. You don't even deserve good propaganda anymore. So it's by hitting you with crap, mediocre propaganda, it kind of demoralizes you in a way, because that's how little your enemy thinks of you. So they're kind of using the propaganda no longer to fool you as such, or deceive you, but to remind you what they think of you. So it's like they're lying to you, but they're not even telling you decent lies anymore. So it's like so the objective isn't necessarily deception, it's kind of demoralization and confusion. And I think I suspect that's what's going on here. But it may be a cover for something else. Like I said, something that's going on, something that we would have, potentially people will have physiological symptoms from. And I mean stuff that could be, graphene related. It could be related to like nano networks or nanoparticles or interference with the human antenna kind of scenario, or something like that. Something that's gone into the food chain, exposure to, terahertz band, kind of dirty electricity, and or which 5G, I understand, is a cover for that. It's the 5G narrative is a cover for terahertz communication, and 5G is touted as the problem, whereas I suspect it's not the problem. I think the actual problem is kind of nano networks on the 5G, on the terahertz band, and which has been used for biodigital communication, using light and sound and technologies we don't fully understand yet on a kind of public level, like, but anyway, so it remains to be seen. So I suspect as well that the psychological warfare people are having a field day at all this, and they're at a point now where they're understanding kind of human curiosity and confusion and cognition, and trying to interpret the signals coming from the world around, like, it's increasingly and exponentially having a deleterious effect on the mass psyche, because it's more smoke and mirrors and confusion, and but it becomes a norm. It sort of becomes a norm. It loses its kind of newness, and it's kind of what's the word I'm looking for? It's novel. Yeah, it loses its novelty, and the absurd becomes normalized and almost accepted as like the new normal is absurd. What used to be an absurdity, kind of, or wacky, or kind of Monty Python or surreal, and now is slowly drifting into kind of the normal. And that's why the people at the lunch table today just kind of, they don't pay that much heed, they're not stand to, or what's that? Oh, it's the rats, and they're kind of busy chewing on their chips and their shepherd's pie. And lunch was nice, actually. And but this is just on the TV in the background on Sky News, and and then it's like it's forgotten about. But is it because the French guys, when they got off the ship, they forgot to wear the adequate PPE, and you're being told this, and as you show, you get the footage then of the guy sitting in the background with the Curb Your the comedy, the Jewish comedy kind of music, and it's all poking fun at you, and but it's kind of there's a malevolent undertone to it all, a kind of shadowy thing that's a bit sick, it's a kind of a sick thing, like, it's not funny, like, as such. There's a sick aspect to it all, and that's, I suppose, the worrying part of it, that someone in the mass media and on a global level has that sentiment, a sick kind of a manipulative sentiment.
That's really well said. I mean, I can't actually agree with you more. There was an interesting author that I came across as of late called James C. Scott, and in his work, which is called Seeing Like a State, really fascinating book. I've just started it, and he discusses the concept of legibility, and the way he sort of describes legibility and illegibility is that the state views us almost as we come into this world as unquantifiable units of life. And what the state is seeking to do, and by the way, this is why the state and AI are tied together, and why AI is effectively just the digital manifestation of the state. Because like AI, the state wants to create measurable units of things. It wants to create legibility within the population. And so it wants to, it wants you to be standardized, right? That's why they introduced, for example, last names or surnames, official languages, constitutions, laws, standard units of measurement, you name it, right? Even standardized customs. And one he gives in the book is for example, the state's sort of first, very primitive states. They first tried to standardize and induce or introduce legibility into their systems through, for example, surveying and demarcation. And this is where we get mathematics from, and geometry and all of this. So, for example, you find in a lot of older languages, primitive languages, even pre-civilizational languages, if they were describing a place, and by the way, you see this with Gaelic, both Scots and Irish Gaelic, and Welsh as well, when we're describing something, we'll actually give a description of the landmarks around it, around the place that we're describing, the location, the general geographical features. So, for example, it might be the field behind the old oak tree or something like that, right? But to of course, the legibly mad state, they would want to turn that into plot 402, District 5, as James C. Scott states in the book, right? So everything has to be standardized, it has to be mapped. There's us back to the mapping again. And it has to be as well simplified because simplification is easier for accountancy, and it's easier for, of course, mathematical calculation and measurement. But he makes this point, which is that the state eventually ignores what he calls the metis, which is the local wisdom, or it also can be understood as the sort of lived reality of the human being itself, the beingness of the human, and instead sort of adds greater value and weight to data and data points. And data literally means, from the Latin in the Proto-Indo-European roots, etymologically, to give, right? So every time we're using these data-driven devices, or when it talks about a data-driven system, it's meaning a system in which all the citizenry are completely legible, 365, 24/7, because we're giving them all the data, right? Data literally means to give. So we're giving them all the points of us, and we're making ourselves legible in a sort of 24/7 manner. So this is the techne, or the formal status, as Scott states. And he says eventually systems actually collapse because they lose this metis. And this metis is the sort of magic. It's the practical and formal, intuitive, and deeply complex, localized wisdom culture that actually makes societies work. It's this sort of chaos that's at the heart of everything, the unquantifiable variable that ultimately is like this ignis centralis. It's the central fire of all societies themselves. This is why, of course, in our society today, it feels dead. It feels like a husk because they've tried to destroy this. And of course, all systems known to man eventually succumb to this. But the belief, their belief is that if, of course, they automate this through technology, through digital manifestation, the AI essentially, or AGI, that they, of course, can transcend this prior problem of destroying the metis, of totally prioritizing legibility of the citizen. So to mention as well, you know, like what you stated, everything's an ARG, right? It's an alternate reality game. It is an interactive storybook, effectively. And like what you're saying, they want the system almost legitimizes itself through the participation of the members, right? This unwitting duping of us participating in it, and moreover as well, again, it provides more and more and more data, right? Even the system is so totalized and it commodifies its own critique, and it commodifies it through data. And the reason they want the data, again, the giving out of our information, of how we're feeling, of our immediate sort of position and feeling or status report, is because it, you know, the systems, state-run systems are systems of power are deeply paranoid. So they have to know incessantly, you know, what you're doing, where you're going. They need legibility, right? Legibility creates sort of predictability. And moreover as well, these ARGs that you see, for example, in the quote-unquote truth-seeking, this links to the gamification of life itself. And you see this, of course, with social media and such, right? That everything is it's almost we are collaborating and building our own prison, right? It's we are part of the world building itself, right? So the ARG almost establishes a sense, a very pastiche sense of community, right? Of course, it's all parasocial. It's not actually reality, but it creates this sort of pastiche or artificial sense. And moreover as well, it establishes a meta-narrative behind the system itself. This, in fact, actually creates a sort of emotional bond between us and the system. You know, you start to see in conspiracy circles, if there hasn't been, you know, an ARG or an event, let's just say, they actually start to go almost cold turkey. You know, they almost start to go mad in a sense. I've seen it before, you know, where we've went 2 or 3 months without one of these events, or at least one of these, you know, colossal events, and people start to, you know, they start losing their minds. They're trying to get, so it's almost a form of escapism. And moreover as well, in psychology, there's a thing called I found it effect, right? Which is when a person discovers a truth through a series of clues, they tend to hold a much more fierce belief in that thing if they were otherwise just simply told about it, right? So this is also a potent, very, very potent tool for radicalizing people, and also brand fanaticism, again, that, or ideological fanaticism. So you leave the breadcrumbs for people to find, right? And then they feel more emotionally invested in those things. And I mean, it's really quite ingenious. It's very simple as well. And also as well, there's a link to this with the system in which we abide within. Effectively now, and it's like what you stated, things are becoming more and more ridiculous. That is because we're now in a system where we're locked in to digital parasocial social media platforms basically 24/7, and everything you begin in you're seeing upon that is all very dopaminergically heightening. And it gets to the point that because, and of course with short form content, we become dopaminergically hijacked, and our hedonic, which is the pleasure threshold, that becomes higher and higher and higher. So we need greater and greater shock value and ridiculousness to reach those dopaminergic levels, and basically to grab our attention. And so this is why narratives have become more and more ridiculous. But moreover, as well, I believe they've also, through these ARG-like environments, they've actually decentralized a lot of their propaganda. Fundamentally, with the influencer-like attention economy that we live in and the social media age, we actually feed ourselves our own entertainment. We are our own digital jesters within our own echo chamber cores. And so ultimately, they only have to provide us certain initiatory sparks or baits to begin the process of the ARG. So it really is quite efficient when you look at the propaganda. You know, previously, for example, in the 1940s, think about how much resources and time and effort and almost as well, the compartmentalized systems of journalists and media companies and all of this, all of the apparatus that surrounded controlling the minds of individuals and directing and shaping society going forward. Now you can decentralize all of that. The people are controlling themselves. It's a system that is near as damn it to autopoiesis, which is self-regulation and, of course, negentropy, or the negation of entropy. So it's tied in as well with it's fun. You know, propaganda now is fun. It's not goose steps. It's now bright, pretty, saturated hues of interesting colors. It's distraction and play. It's escapism. They're turning complex and social issues into basically little games, you know, that you play with the heroes and the villains and the hidden secrets. And it's like what you're saying, it's an interactive game, you know. It's brilliant.
There's another one. It is. And as well, like, you know, if you're suffering kind of from the mildly neurotic state of existing in the modern age, which is a perfectly normal kind of place to be, like you're trying to cope with all this stuff, like you need to sort of detangle. Like, we're talking about the propaganda, and we use it as a kind of a mechanism. For example, you and I in this conversation right now, we're speaking about what we consider to be active propaganda. So by doing that, you and I connect, and we end up sort of grounding each other and kind of restoring each other's sanity a little bit. So after a while, it's as though we need that propaganda, need to discuss the propaganda, and in turn need the propaganda itself as a mechanism for us to reestablish our own sanity. So it becomes a very strange relationship with the thing. It's as if you know, decoding propaganda is like a ritual for excavating one's own sanity out of the dross and flotsam and jetsam of the obliterated modern experience that had shattered all these bits and pieces around us, and we're trying to pick it out of bits out of our teeth and out of our hair and pick ourselves away from it. Like, and it's as if we have to have, well, what is this narrative about? Like, it, you know, so we become kind of weirdly codependent, or in danger of it, like, you know, on our captors. And, you know, we've had to kind of develop this hybrid existence where we're, you know, we have to reference the messages from our captors to sort of assert ourselves. So sometimes I wonder if in the future we will completely detach altogether from all this type of narrative and completely insulate ourselves from it, and there's the danger in doing that we play into the hands of the people who are trying to control us, because then they, in a sense that we're not listening anymore. Maybe that's what they wanted or maybe that's not what they want. I'm not sure how it would play out in the long term, but there definitely seems to be, as you said there, you notice in people there's almost withdrawal symptoms if the psyop du jour, to use Ehrman's term, if we're not kind of lashing into it,
Oh, absolutely. Well, see, it's another thing as well, right? So if we let's just imagine for a moment a sort of more ancestral way of living, which meaning that we are in, we have effectively we're living within very small Dunbar number compliant tribes, right? So those are tribes under 150 or so souls, and everyone knows everyone else, and we're in this world, and it's a very, very real and tangible world in which we abide within. Again, you don't in that world, in that system, and we know this because there's tribes that live in this sort of subsistence living, and they don't necessarily have language to describe, for example, we have escapism, which escapism itself is a concept where we're placing value and implicitly placing attention on things that are fiction or fake, right? So, tribes subsistence living, tribes that are in subsistence living don't have this sort of this language, this conceptual framework, this conceptual understanding. So therefore, for example, video games is one such avenue that I can speak to, which is, why do people spend so much time playing something which is, totally, undeniably, incontestably fictional, right? Why do they spend so much time gazing at it, right? We also have as well novels, fictional novels, right? Why do you spend so much time reading it, looking at it, understanding it, exploring the concepts contained therein, the character? So what happens when you enter civilization is you almost enter a world not of reality, but of a hyper reality, right? A sort of fictionalized overlay onto reality itself. And this allows you to abide within what is an urban environment, an artificial environment, an environment that tries to mimic nature. Of course, we see this even with architecture itself. Pillars are trees, right? The roof is the canopy. The floor is the earth, is the ground. And we hewn all of these materials, these natural materials, into rather unnatural shapes, right? So ultimately, to enter civilization is to enter an arena of the fictional, and ultimately, what you're seeing with these ARGs is that even if we all have a consensus surrounding it that it's fake or fictional, why are we spending so much time looking at it? What does that say about our own neuroses or our own psychological state? And this is what you find as well with ARGs. And again, this doesn't just relate to for in terms of psychological warfare. You have ARGs with movie promos and video game promos. One example is the I Love Bees ARG in 2004, which was a Halo 2 sort of promotional ARG. Year Zero, which was a Nine Inch Nails album ARG in 2007, and of course Cicada 3301, which was most likely a sort of intelligence agency community recruitment drive. But all of these things they have this one golden rule, which is TINAG, which is this is not a game, right? So both the creators and the participants have this spoken rule. Even if they state it's fake, they'll never treat it as though it's fake or fictional, right? And the interaction itself is almost the signature of its own truth, right? It's of this this declaration of its truth, even though we may say it's fictional. By the time that we are dedicating to it, it ultimately becomes real in our minds to some degree, you know. So that's one aspect of this. That itself is almost what makes the ARG basically a weapon of mass distraction. And it's a weapon of mass distraction you can't necessarily resist. It's very difficult to resist it. It's like what you're saying, it's like a morbid curiosity, you know? You can't help but look at these things, even if you think they're fake and laughable. It's a morbid curiosity surrounding it.
It's like the proxy or the foster mother or the foster father. It's like, you know, you're looking, there's something missing, and you're psychologically substituting this stuff on some level for something that's missing in the world around you. So it's like psychologically there's an inevitable relationship with the stuff that's almost unavoidable, because you need something to bounce off, like, and you're trying to, you know, I think it's like it can't be avoided, you know, the dynamic. I think they know that as well. Then they know that, like the master kind of psychological sorcerers, they know that as you say, we're going to engage in the computer game, even though we know it's fake, but we're taking this is not a game. That's almost like the maxim of and like that's the case as well with Hantavirus. It's like they push the fake and the mocking aspect of it to the nth degree, because they know deep down that people have taken this concept that, you know, this is not a game, because they're substituting it for a reality. So no matter how farcical aspects of the narrative will become, I think they know people will still, you know, it's like as if they have that what do they call it, Stockholm syndrome, that they just identify with their captor in some way, or their captor narrative, even though they know it's sort of bad for them, and as the case may be, fake, you know, fake narratives, but they still sort of engage with them, because otherwise there's a vacuum, there's a nothingness, like. So it's a power relation thing as well, but I think it's working on some deep sort of psychological archetype, like it's, you know, it's a substitute mechanism for human beings to believe that reality still exists, because otherwise you have insanity. I think it keeps them away from just losing their minds altogether, you know, and kind of, you know, no frame of reference for the real, for reality. So they take on these things as kind of in a substitute.
No, you're totally spot on, and remember as well, like that James C. Scott stated, in that Seeing as the State, they get rid of the metis, which is this sort of communal spirit, this localized wisdom, all of these things which is the beingness of the human, and you're being placed into the alchemical urban sprawl, which is the Kurkurbit, the alembic, right, where all of this reactivity is taking place, because the state is trying to mold you. What is power? Power is effectively well, by its definition, it is the control of one's consciousness, because consciousness is fundamentally to power all that exists, and everything they're trying to do is to try and quantify, because, you know, in its natural state, human consciousness is unquantifiable. It's an unquantifiable variable. It's an unpredictable variable. So to exact your will through the actions or behavior of another, and to utilize another's consciousness to sort of realize your own ambitions upon Earth, you have to manipulate their consciousness, so it becomes basically a what would you call it, a sort of devolved aspect of its natural self. This is what's known as the dumbing down process. This is why people are becoming less and less capable of expressing their own innate, congenital divine spark, because again, that's they want to move that divine spark artificially to AI, which becomes the new god, and then people just live vicariously through their screens parasocially. That this is effectively their sort of a grand get out of jail card, you know, to go beyond the cycles of entropy or decay. But another thing you mentioned as well with this whole ARG concept, and really what's also known as transmedia storytelling, is that you stated we actually, it sort of brings us together in an artificial communal sense, and it stops us from going insane through that way. But it's almost like the ARG is designed to be too difficult for one person alone, right? So it actually wants you to form a hive mind of thousands of participants, right? Be it on Discord or YouTube or Reddit or wherever it may be. So it forms basically a collective intelligence. And, you know, as time goes by, as even we see with conspiratorial circles, they actually gain a sort of orthodoxy, right? So for example, I would there's certain things you can't speak about with the sort of conspiratorial circles because it's polemical. So for example, if you mention anything about flat earth, until very recently it was totally off the books. If you said I don't believe in flat earth, I think the earth is a globe, this orthodoxy of negation that had taken over the conspiratorial circles, again, vis-a-vis an ARG itself, and back in 2014, you would have been you would have been called a shill, you know? I'm not listening to you. But people, again, because they found these things vis-a-vis these collective rabbit holes where they followed the breadcrumb trail, they get the I found it effect. So they fiercely defend these things because they believe they found a truth that wasn't placed there for it to be found, but that they found it naturally and organically. So yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, the problem is these people, see, the people that rule us, they have a view of reality that most of us, even in these circles, can't even quantify. Right? I'm not saying they're gods. I'm not saying they're hyper intelligent. I'm just saying they have a different view of reality to how we view it. We see things very black and white, which is of course why you have the checkerboard floor and why Masons stand on it in a sort of insulting way, mockingly. They view all of this alchemically. They've been studying reality, which is effectively their prey, for, you know, hundreds of years, centuries at least, at the very least, probably millennia. And they effectively they understand what makes humanity tick, and they understand how to do the bait and switch, how to do the great work, how to bring humanity from this state to that state, and we go right along with it, and we actually believe we're freeing ourselves while we're actually enslaving ourselves. This is the sort of ingenuity of it all. But don't get me wrong, that doesn't mean what we are doing right now and speaking about this. It doesn't necessarily mean that it's not valuable, right? You can make your way through this sort of this briar patch, so to say. You can get through the needles and the thorns of it to get to some sort of truth. But you mentioned as well the wide body area network and smart dust and that, and I wanted to show you this video. I don't know if you've come across it yet, but it's by Greg Reese, and I just want to get your take upon it, man. Just 2 seconds. I'll just put it on. Yep, here we go.
The Smart Dust project was funded by DARPA for military applications, specifically for rapid deployment of defense sensor networks onto the battlefield. Battlefield sensing is inherently about detecting people who don't know that they're being detected, The invisibility and undetectability are deliberate design priorities. This technology appeared in the public with U.S. patent 11354-666B1, smart dust usage, which was filed on May 26, 2016, and granted on June 7, 2022. It is assigned to Wells Fargo Bank and describes a system for authenticating a user making a payment using smart dust. Smart dust is technically known as MEMS, microelectromechanical systems, and is comprised of what are called motes. A mote is a single, self-contained microsensor node. Each mote measures 1 cubic millimeter or less and is roughly the size of a grain of sand. These motes are released as clouds with thousands of sensor nodes simultaneously sampling the target from multiple angles and positions. The biometric data being collected includes location, facial and body recognition, heart rate, blood pressure, body temperature, breath rate, voice recognition, and fingerprint scanning. The system is designed to create a unique cryptographic signature for every individual based on biological and behavioral data, and is designed to operate without being noticed. The patent describes the motes as a cloud around the user, but UC Berkeley researchers have successfully implanted smart dust sensors into rats in order to monitor and control nerve and muscle activity. This technology requires no batteries and relies on ultrasound to draw power. Scientists claim that for humans, internal smart dust devices could monitor vital signs and could enable control over prosthetics and robotic limbs. In March 2022, the University of Washington's Dandelion breakthrough, partially funded by the U.S. Air Force, deployed tiny battery-free wireless sensors by wind, inspired by dandelion seeds. The senior author stated that our prototype suggests that you could use a drone to release thousands of these devices in a single drop. In 2024, a large blanket of fog affected the United Kingdom, the USA, and Canada. Over 20,000 travelers in the UK and 3.8 million drivers in the USA were impacted. People described it as a thick blanket of fog with a particle-like appearance, which had an odd chemical, electrical, or burning smell to it. And many people claimed to experience fever, coughing, sore throat, headache, and fatigue after exposure. The fog hit during the Christmas and New Year travel period, when millions were moving around for the holidays. A second patent, US 11748-578B1, predictive text system, was filed in November 2021 and granted on September 2023 to Wells Fargo Bank. This patent describes a system that uses neural networks and machine learning to analyze and predict your financial thoughts and intentions in real time as you type. Combined with the biometric data from Smart Dust, this creates a system that can monitor both what you're physically doing and what you're thinking about financially. A predictive behavioral surveillance system designed to be always on and continuously learning. This is the exact infrastructure needed for implementing a social credit system. The Smart Dust market was valued at $153.9 million in 2024 and is estimated to grow at a compound annual growth rate of over 14.3% from 2025 to 2034. Industrial use has increased significantly in 2023 and 2024, with integration of artificial intelligence and machine learning algorithms now allowing smart dust devices to analyze data locally and make autonomous decisions. This technology is currently moving from laboratories to public deployment, which has naturally caused concern. In the 1950s and 60s, the U.S. Army conducted open-air biological and chemical tests over American cities without public knowledge or consent. Greg Reese reporting.
So that was Greg Reese, but as you notice with that, this is all about legibility. We're back to legibility again there, which is that the smart dust, and of course the wide body area networks, it can also it effectively creates a 24/7 data loop feedback loop between the citizen and, of course, the central nodes of control. But you'll notice there as well, within those patents, the first patent was the ending was 666. So they're almost they do these things intentionally. That itself is, of course, it's got the fingerprints of an ARG. But what's your take upon that?
Well, I'll as I understand it, and I'll have to head off now actually shortly, but you don't need smart dust. You don't need implants. This can be done with light and sound and radar, LiDAR, and beam steering technology, and with photonic emissions from the human body. And I know that's, and you can with read-write functionality. And but that's the understanding I have. I don't know how much of that is sci-fi or how much of it is actual scientific fact. But the understanding I have from what I've read and listened to currently is that this is digital convergence kind of 101, that your body can be basically interfered with like an antenna. They can read and write all sorts of functions out of your body, and they don't need any implants in your body. They don't need any nanomaterials in the air around you or anything like that, or smart dust or anything like that. It can be done literally on the electromagnetic spectrum, principally, as far as I understand, on the terahertz band. In that it's like high kind of microwave type, high frequency, albeit at a nanoscale. They're what I think they call them ultra weak is the term they use. Ultra weak signals. Like they're very, very weak signals from the human body, so they have to be sort of intercepted and amplified. But exactly how that's done, like you're talking about semiconductors that are literally the width of a single atom, using in some of this technology. Like this is where the cutting edge stuff is, and I only have like a bluffer's guide to it. I know some of the terms and some of the basic concepts, but this is where I think all the focus should be on this area. What is happening with the tech in this area? I think AI itself is a diversion from this stuff.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
and much of what we're seeing with hantaviruses and these various wars are also a diversion from this. This is Iron Man, and this is the Age of Aquarius, and this is the big stuff, But anyway, I don't know, maybe we can take up this chat again maybe tomorrow evening or something, Silas, but I'm gonna
absolutely. Yeah, man. I should be free tomorrow. Yeah, we'll discuss that topic, because that's certainly very interesting.
Sorry, not to cut short, man, but I gotta hit the sack. I'm up.
Oh no, I have to head off as well, mate. I'm starting to get tired too. Right, to take it easy. Thank you very much.
Okay,
Absolutely, man.
Good night. Talk soon.